good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully everybody can hear me. So we're just going to do a little test. Would you mind standing up, please? Okay. Now turn to face somebody on your left-hand side and shake their hands or say hello. Okay. Right, you can sit down now. Okay, there's a reason I just did that. So we're in a connected world, we're in restricted airspace, but we're not connected. And you've just proven that we're not connected. So how do we do that, and how do we do that at scale? Because if we don't do it, this is what will happen overall. So my name's Drewitt. I'm Business Development and Sales Head for Fly Avionics, working out of Crawley. This is a keynote speech. Going to give you some ideas and solutions that Thales has been looking at, but also the wider world has been also engaged with in terms of regulation, particularly around the unmanned air traffic management systems. So imagine the world, and the world. We've kind of always been looking at the future. If you think about when drones were first thought about, well, it was in the 1800s. Actually, in the 1900s, there was a flying car. Now, that's in the 1900s, and we're still talking about how do we regulate, how do we make drones safe, what technology do we put on them. So what is the realistic vision for a near future of air mobility? So while you've seen in the press lots and lots about we're going to deploy lots and lots of drones, they're going to deliver your pizzas, they're going to deliver your Amazon packages, and they're going to do other stuff. Well, what's the other stuff? And actually, how are they going to be integrated across all of flight? So when we're looking at the near future now, we've got to take into account all of these functions. And actually, we've got more of a function in terms of surveillance. So looking at our border patrols, looking at our own country, and looking at the areas where we get demonstrations, as an example, prime example, where we need a drone to take the pictures. And then we've got the critical infrastructure. And you'll have seen some demonstrations of where we can get medical packages to countries quickly. That's a real important thing within the drone space. So how do we do that, and how do we do that at scale? Because that's the important thing. This is here to stay. It's not going to go away. So there are a number of building blocks that we need to get in place. And what I'm talking about now is enabling the good guys, not the bad guys. People who do demonstrations, that's absolutely fine, don't have a problem. But actually, we're talking about how do we make things safe for everybody to exist and to be able to actually do what they want to do, whether that's in agriculture, whether that's in North Sea oil rigs, whether that's in surveillance. We've got to make the system safe to be able to do that. Thales is doing some of that. We're working on a project right now called UAS 100, which is looking at a long endurance loitering civilian drone that can help people like the Border Patrol. But actually, we're not making drones. We are not a drone manufacturer. What we're doing is enabling the technology to be able to provide the infrastructure, to provide the integration of not only the technology, but also air traffic management. So we're also working with the regulators to help set the regulations for the future. So, I talked about good drones. There's also bad drones. I was actually, before the demonstration, going to ask a question: does anybody know what's a bad drone and what's a good drone? In reality, I bet you could name some, but you'd get most of it wrong, because actually we don't know. So in producing our drones, and doing them at scale, no matter what category they're in, we've also got to think about the counter UAS. And the counter UAS isn't a military term, it's actually a civil term. And if you remember at Gatwick Airport, the intrusion that grounded the flights. So how do we do that? How do we protect our hospitals? How do we protect our airports and ports? So what do we need to do to do that? So we've got to talk about good drones and bad drones. So in doing that, we need to unlock what I call the building blocks. The building blocks are the technologies, the enablers to be able to get the information off the platform quickly. We need to equip it with the navigation sensors. We need to equip it with the GPS, denied GPS, to stop people from trying to jam the drones. We've got to meet all the regulations, and the regulations are evolving day on day on day, and they're confusing. So some people don't actually know what you're supposed to do. So, you know, if I ask you in the audience, what's the current UK regulations for your typical drone flyer, I'd be surprised if 50%, maybe 40% actually knew. And those regulations are evolving. So what are we doing about that? We're working with the CAA, we're working with the EASA, we're helping to identify where there are flaws in the current regulations, where we need to adapt the regulations. But we're not just doing it ourselves, we're bringing in SMEs like yourselves and other companies where we can do it together so that we're creating that safer sky. We've got to look at the legal and liabilities. So, you know, we've got urban taxis out there and they drop on somebody's house. What are we going to do? The first time that happens, what's going to happen? Everything will be grounded. And then we'll have to start from scratch again. We don't want to start from scratch. It's here to stay, so let's get the regulations right now. And then you've got to look at the business cases. There's small drones, there's large drones, urban taxis, air mobility, etc. So how are we mobilizing the supply chain? How are we mobilizing the value chain? What does it mean as a business to us? So where's the technology? So the technology is focused in a number of areas. So one is air traffic management solutions, and that's looking at how drones can operate in amongst current restricted airspace. And we've done some work at Dartech looking at digital twins. So we created a digital twin of a drone corridor, working with the CAA to look at how that corridor can be used in a safe manner to allow drones to fly in and out. But we're also looking at the plug and play technology for avionics. You know, I said we need a nav solution. We need some sort of mission capability. A mission can be anything. It can be just your control function. It can be the weaponization. It could be anything that you can imagine. So we've got to think about that. So how do I regulate that? How do I know that the technology that's been fitted to the drones is the right technology to allow me, as an example, if I now do BV loss, so the beyond visual line of sight. If I do that, how do I know my technology is going to work? If it fails, what do I want the drone to do? Right now, it returns. Actually, I might not want it to return. It might be on a border patrol somewhere, and I need it to stay there, but I've lost my communication. So what am I going to do about it? So we've been talking to a number of companies, and Thales themselves have looked at resilient comms. So how do I switch communication networks? How do I make it secure so that if I lose communication, I'm sure that my drone is going to stay in a box, or it's going to stay, it's going to continue the mission in the way that I expected. So this is a picture of the US 100, and as I said, we're not building a drone. We need a drone to demonstrate technology, but we actually are building the enabler to support the drone infrastructure. And it, as I said, it's not just the drone technology, It's about your ground control. It's about autonomy. It's about AI. It's about air traffic management systems. It's about the whole ecosystem. And that's something that we absolutely need to get right from day one. But we're faced with new challenges, and those new challenges are aviation in itself is changing. The regulations around how you fly, precision navigation is coming in. So what does that mean? So now I can fly on a direct route. I don't need to fly to a flight plan that air traffic or I've planned. I can now do that myself. Well, if I'm doing that myself, I also need to be connected to everything else around me because I need to know what's there. Now, if I'm not sitting in the cockpit, how am I going to do that? So drones need to have connection. They need to have ADS-B. They need to have comms data links so that I know that if I'm in my manned aircraft, I know exactly what's around me and when. So these are all things that have got to be thought about in just scaling up the ecosystem. And then, of course, so how do you test all that? And the testing bit is an interesting piece. So there's a lot of projects going on. Some of them coordinated, some of them not. One of the projects is called Project Hado, and this project is about how you shape the regulatory environment to work where you've got restricted airspace. So this project is being carried out at Heathrow Airport. It's a 24/7 monitoring of drones, monitoring of what would be air taxis against the restricted airspace, against the normal air traffic, manned air traffic. It's a program that will set the regulations as to how you bring all that together. It's not just over here. There's programs in the US, and they're all doing the same thing. But not all of them are connected. And if they're not connected, how do we then look at, we want to fly from one country to the other? So we're now talking about long distance. Airborne air mobility as an example. So, I want to fly from one country to the next. What are the rules? What are the regulations? What do I need on my platform? What don't I need on my platform? These are all considerations that we all need to be thinking about. The one thing that Thales does is we are in no shape or form could do everything end to end, okay? We can bring the building blocks, but actually it's about building an ecosystem around us and bringing in partners to do that. So we kind of provide that glue, we provide that longevity, but in doing so, we enable SMEs particularly to come and flourish with the technology, with the capabilities, with the regulations. So I talked about some of the technology. So when we're looking at C2 as an example, so the command and control of a drone, so what do I need for that? Do I need a SATCOM? SATCOMs are too heavy for some drones. So how am I going to do that? How am I going to know where the drone is at the right time, right place, and I can tell it what to do? So we talk about the anti-jamming techniques. So how do I make sure that nobody's actually going to change the pattern of my drone? How do I know that nobody's going to change and get into the software of my drone? So how do I protect it? How do I protect it from cyber? All considerations in scaling up in a big scale. So I talked about the ground infrastructure, and we have a radar deployed right now at Gatwick Airport. That's due to the drone incursion previously, is now protecting the airport from drones. And in fact, somebody told me a story this morning about somebody that they knew just outside of Crawley, got their drone, thought they'd fly it, put it up in the air. Next thing they know, there's blue lights at their door. Those blue lights were enabled by the Avalon radar that is now sitting at Gatwick Airport. So it's about detect, and do something about it. And that do something about it is find out where the source is and find out whether is it a good drone or a bad drone. So what's next? So we've talked about good drones, we've talked about bad drones, talked about the technology that's part of it. You can see in the picture on the right here the Avalent radar, but actually we don't provide the radar. We provide the integration. So we provide the intelligence gathering. We provide the AI functions to be able to assimilate all of the data in a nanosecond, because that's what you've got sometimes in terms of being able to react. So the future. So the future is uncrewed. It's never going to go away. Started in 1800s. It's still going to be there in the next 50, 100 years. So, but it's moving now further at pace than it's ever done. And you can see that in the show today. So it's important that we create the ecosystem. We understand the operational challenges. We understand the risks. We work with the regulators. We understand the technologies that need to be on the systems, whether that's the urban air mobility or the drones. And we know how we can connect together to make it a safe world. Thank you for listening. That's all I've got. Sorry for the interruptions. I'll open the floor to questions, not too many hard ones, I hope. So please, over to you.
How important do you think remote ID will be in enabling those safe and secure skies that you talk about in the UK?
So one of the challenges is recognizing who's up there. And with remote ID, you can understand very quickly. You can pinpoint who the drone is, where it's come from, and you've got information on it. So remote ID is really important. You know, I talked about ADS-B, but not all drones will have ADS-B. But I still need to know where they are, what they're doing, and how we use them. So remote ID is really important for the future of drones.
Regulations. What role is Thales playing in bringing about the rules in BB laws and autonomous flight in the UK?
So I talked about the US 100. So if you imagine that in a world where we were together in Europe, we'd have been talking to EASA and the CAA at the same time. So what we're doing, the US 100 is helping EASA set the regulations. Okay, so we are the enabler to try out some of the use cases, so that they can then decide what regulations go forward and what's not. The CAA tend to follow EASA. It's kind of a quid pro quo. They follow the FAA as well. So in doing that, we're using the CAA from an air traffic management perspective. So we're looking at how you regulate air traffic. I talked about the drone corridor. That was one example where we're helping to set the regulations. Heathrow, another area where we're helping set the regulations. We are not setting the regulations ourselves. We're an enabler to do that. Thank you very much.